Vietnamization is a plan that called for South Vietnamese to take more control over their situation, over their fighting. Right? A lot what we've seen in the past few years in Afghanistan. Okay. So we would start, American troops would gradually withdraw from the country. In '69, Nixon announced the withdrawal of the first 25,000 American soldiers. Now the other part, the last part of the plan was this bombing, this increased bombing of the country, right? Nixon ordered the bombing of enemy supply routes and hideouts in neighboring Cambodia and Laos. Alright, and you can see Cambodia is that country right there in the south. Alright, it's kind of like a tannish color, and then Laos is, I guess that's purple. And Kennedy would call for the bombing of these countries so that the supplies could be limited to South Vietnam. But he wanted to keep the bombing a secret. Now, still more opposition at the home front. Okay? Just bear with me, we're almost done here. We're almost done. Okay? New protest marches would start. Right? In late 1969, the growing sentiment for the ending of the war. Right? More than 300,000 people would meet, alright, in October in a protest in Washington, D.C. Now, along with this three-step plan, Congress also tried to end the war with peace talks through Henry Kissinger, alright, who would be representing the United States in the Paris talks. Now, because the United States was hoping that the increased bombings, would eventually lead the North Vietnamese to peace talks, it didn't happen that way, okay? The North Vietnamese, they adopted a wait-and-see attitude. They believed that the growing strength of the anti-war movement in the United States would force the Americans to withdraw. Now, Nixon, alright, realizing that this was kind of happening, in a speech in November, he appealed to the silent majority again, the same people that helped him win the election. And he said, North Vietnam cannot defeat or humiliate the United States. He said only Americans can do that. So what ended up happening is they expanded the war a little bit further, which would lead to now campus protests. And many people in America, many Americans viewed the Cambodian invasion as a widening of the Vietnam War. The bombing of Cambodia so provided more of an anti-war sentiment in the country. Happened majorly in two places. One was in Kent State University in Kent, Ohio. They burned a military building on the campus. So the Ohio governor declared martial law, emergency military rule, the campus that ordered 3,000 National Guard troops at Kent State. On May 4th, at noon, students gathered for a protest rally on the campus lawn. The National Guard, young, inexperienced, and nervous, told the protesters to leave. When that did not happen, some students threw rocks at the Guard members. One National Guard unit chased some students between two buildings, and then, for some reason that's not really clear, even to this day, troops opened fire. 4 students were dead, and at least 9 were wounded. That wouldn't be the only place, though, that violence would erupt. On May 15th, in an all-African American Jackson State University in Mississippi, after a night of protest, 2 students were shot and killed. Witnesses said that they blamed the police for recklessly blasting a residence hall with gunfire. The police claimed that they were protecting themselves from sniper fire. Now, peace at hand. On March 1972, the North Vietnamese launched another major offensive in the South. Now, because the United States had fewer troops left in Vietnam, Nixon resumed bombing. Nixon ordered American planes to bomb targets near Hanoi and the capital of North Vietnam. He also ordered the Navy to plant mines in North Vietnamese harbor. The president, however, stopped insisting the North Vietnamese remove all of its troops from South Vietnam before a full American withdrawal. Nixon would then send Henry Kissinger to negotiate again. So he would go to Paris. Now, in December of 1972, the heaviest bombardment of the war fell on North Vietnamese cities. He believed that if he could bomb them, that they would eventually return to the talks. So the Americans pressured the South Vietnamese to accept the peace terms. On January 27, 1973, the negotiators signed a peace agreement. But that would not be the end of it. After that, the U.S. troops, agreed to pull out of their country. The North Vietnamese agreed to return all prisoners of war back to America. But it didn't end there. The North Vietnamese never gave up their idea of unifying the country. From the start, they wanted a unified one country, Vietnam. So they began a major offensive in 1975. Now, with the South Vietnamese weak without the help of the American soldiers, the North Vietnamese tanks approached Saigon. As the forces advanced, the last Americans left the country, some by helicopter, by roof of the U.S. Embassy. Thousands of Vietnamese who had supported the Americans also fled to the United States. Many more could not escape. And on April 30th, 1975, Saigon would fall to the Communists. Soon after, South Vietnam would surrender, and the long, hard-fought war would be over.